The NFL trade deadline approaching November 5th at 4 p.m. There are a lot of trade rumors and players being linked to teams like the Packers, like the Lions, like the Vikings. We're going to cover that and more. Also, talk about the NFC North in this video. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. It's super irritating around this time of the year because you start seeing some players being linked to your team that just some make sense, but some just don't make any sense whatsoever. What do I mean by that? Well, Max Crosby, edge rusher for the Raiders. Why would the Raiders give him up? Well, he's being linked to multiple teams, Green Bay being one of them. Adam Schefter already reported out there that the Raiders already got a trade offer for one first-round pick because they saw Devontae Adams leave. They're like, okay, this team must be folding. They must be all in. But why on earth would the Raiders get rid of one of the best pass rushers in the NFL? Why not build around that guy? So there are absolutely no reasons to believe that the Raiders would be moving on from Max Crosby. Again, Schefter reported that a team offered him one first-round pick. They denied it. They turned it down, and they said they wouldn't even accept two first-round picks for Max Crosby. And quite frankly, I don't blame them for turning down an offer like that. There's also the trade rumors that this article came out, three realistic trades the Packers could make ahead of the NFL trade deadline. Well, let's take a look at them. Malik Willis, this one, if there are teams that are desperate out there, the Cleveland Browns potentially being one of them because Watson is just terrible. He's awful. But more than that, they've got his contract. So that is the worst part of the Cleveland Browns Watson's deal is just they're carrying so much money, and you can get a quarterback like Malik Willis, a guy that is similar to Watson, that is too fast, that he can run, he can pass. The Packers obviously proved that he can win underneath them without Jordan Love. So hence the importance to retain a quarterback like Malik Willis. It just doesn't make any sense for the Packers to move on just in case something, God forbid, anything happens to Jordan Love, that he misses more time than the 2 games he already missed with his sprained MCL. You'd hate for something to go wrong. You need a backup quarterback. Malik Willis, they seem to have found it in him. They traded a 7th-round draft pick, so this just really doesn't make sense on any accord. It makes sense for the Browns, just not for the Packers. Another one right here says, trade rumors for Romeo Doubs reunites Aaron Rodgers and Romeo Doubs. And this article came out post the Jets going and getting Devontae Adams. Why is that? Well, Aaron Rodgers called out Mike Williams in a press conference. He's clearly not happy with him. If you watch that game, he had a couple of key drops in that game. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, he needs to have trust in his wide receiver. He just doesn't have it with Mike Williams. I could see the Jets moving on from Mike Williams, but not replacing him with a Romeo Doubs. They've already got their guy in Lazard. Lazard and Aaron Rodgers have this camaraderie there. Of course, they got Devontae Adams and then Garrett Wilson. I just don't see an addition like Romeo Doubs making sense for New York. Romeo Doubs in Green Bay, of course, was disgruntled there for a second, but they seem to have patched that all up, especially after last week's performance with Romeo Doubs. Just don't see that one making sense either. Another trade rumor has the Packers acquiring Hassan Reddick for a 5th-round draft pick. Okay, so Reddick was traded from Philadelphia to New York. He's kind of held out, not wanting to play for New York. This just doesn't make any sense on any account because Hassan Reddick, there's a whole lot of money wrapped up into this dude, so the Packers would have to acquire his salary. That's just one. But 2, the Jets would have to send a 2nd-round draft pick if they moved on from him and sent it back into the NFC. That was part of the deal when they got him from Philadelphia, that if they were to ship him back into the NFC, they would also have to ship a 2nd-round pick back to Philadelphia. So why on earth would the Jets give up Hassan Reddick, a 2nd-round pick, for a 5th-round pick? Just doesn't make any sense. I wish people would do some of the research before they start sending out these trade rumors. Okay, so if anything made sense, okay, so you've got Aiden Hutchinson And what a terrible injury he sustained. And my heart goes out for him. You'd hate seeing any injury like that sustained, especially to a young, talented guy like Aiden Hutchinson. He was already in line to win the Defensive Player of the Year. And I don't see why he wouldn't have. He had 6.5 sacks, which is leading the league. He has 25 pressures, which is leading the league. His pass rush win rate is at 34%, which is leading the league. This dude is a absolute stud. So the Lions lose both their DNs, and I don't see the Lions are building their roster a little bit different than I've ever seen, which gives me fear as a Packer fan because the Lions aren't going to just knee-jerk reaction. Just, we lose Hutchinson for the year, so let's go and sign somebody big. There's rumors linked to the Lions acquiring Hassan Reddick. Again, we've already talked about that. It just doesn't make any sense for the Jets to send Hassan Reddick a second-round pick in exchange for whatever the Lions have to give him. Just doesn't make any sense for the Lions to do that, to kind of mortgage their future to get a pass rusher. There's also links to Max Crosby going to Detroit. We've already squashed that because the Raiders have already said, hey, listen, we wouldn't even accept 2 first-round picks for this guy. Don't blame them. So there's already, scratch that. There's rumors for Myles Garrett to be joining the Detroit Lions. And because they moved on from Cooper, people are like, okay, the Browns must be willing to move on and sell out for this season. Well, that's not going to be the case. The Browns have already made it clear that they don't want to move on from Garrett either. And then there was rumors for the Packers to get Hassan Reddick. We've already squashed that one. That's just stupid. And then there's another rumor linked for Zadarius Smith coming back to Green Bay. So here's a question. I know our pass rushers, our edge rushers have struggled a bit this year, Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, but we've got a ton of money wrapped up into those guys. Why on earth would we take on contracts like these guys and bring them in just to be backups in Green Bay? Just doesn't make any sense, especially when we've got so much young talent there. We're the youngest team in the league. You've got Kingsley Enagbare, you got Van Ness on either end as backups. That could, Van Ness is being groomed to be a starter. So just don't see a world where any of this makes sense. Okay, so part 2 of this video, we're going to talk about the NFC North. Okay, so there's a article that came out that was published by ESPN, and it just kind of broke down the teams in the NFC North and their odds of making the playoffs and winning the division. So we're going to cover that here in this video. But this is the strongest division in football. I said it before the season began. This is easily the best division in football that we've probably seen in a lot of years, and they're proving why. Okay, the Minnesota Vikings 5-0, and that's with Sam Darnold there. As of right now, in this particular article, it says that the chances to win the division for the Minnesota Vikings are a 37.1% chance, and their chances to make the playoffs are at nearly 87%. Okay, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that because, again, this is the strongest division in football. I could easily see a lot of the teams in the NFC North making the playoffs. Their X factor is they're going to be getting back TJ Hawkinson. Aaron Jones has already reported practice, so they're looking healthy and ready to face the Detroit Lions. What a game that is going to be. Speaking of the Lions, 4-1. Chances to win the division are 41.4%. Chances to make the playoffs, same as with the Minnesota Vikings, nearly 87%. There, the X factor is Jameson Williams, but you got to take a look at this injury to the Detroit Lions that they suffered in losing both of their ends. Aiden Hutchinson, again, one of the best defensive players in the league. That is a blow to any team out there. And for the Lions, that's just going to create lots of opportunities for their offenses they're going to be facing. I can foresee quarterbacks having quite a bit of time back there picking apart secondaries. Now, the Lions have a decent secondary, but it's not going to be enough to be able to counteract a very little pressure given by the Detroit Lions front, in my opinion. That is a huge blow to the Detroit Lions. It says right here for the Green Bay Packers, they're 4-2. They have a 14.8% chance to win the division and just over a 50% chance to make the playoffs at 65.7%. Almost on par with the Chicago Bears, which we'll talk about here in a second. They have a huge task on their hand facing the Texans. I've heard reporters and analysts say this could be a preview of the Super Bowl between the Texans and the Packers. Both these quarterbacks, Jordan Love and Stroud, are just absolute studs. Probably the best up and coming quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. Their X factor is, of course, Xavier McKinney, and this duo of safeties, the best duo of safeties in the league, which makes it very difficult for teams to pass deep on this team. Their biggest concern is the kicker. They can't seem to find their kicker. They went and signed McManus, so we'll see. Time is going to tell how reliable McManus is out there, but he's going to be more reliable than Carlson or Narvison, in my opinion. And then they have about the Bears. Bears are 4-2 as well. They have a very easy schedule this year. Their upcoming game against the Commanders this week. That's going to be a tough one. I don't see them winning that one. And then they play the Cardinals and then the Patriots. Those are probably 2 wins right there. They have a 6.7 chance to win the division and a 42.2% chance to go to the playoffs. High odds right there. So leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts about whether or not the Packers are going to win the division. I think the Packers should win the division, especially with the injuries sustained by the Detroit Lions. Losing Hutchinson is a massive blow to any team, especially the Lions when they rely on that defensive front and the pressure that Aiden Hutchinson has been giving them. Leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, go Pack, go.